Welcome to the Navic Gaming Podcast, where it is our mission to explore the business and future of video games. We bring together the industry's brightest builders, investors, and thinkers to keep a pulse on current events, dissect emerging trends in games, share lessons learned, and have a great time. This podcast is also part of Navic's growing ecosystem, which ranges from free and premium research to consulting and advisory services. For more information, visit www.navic.co. This episode is brought to you by Dive. Most game studios have data, they just can't use it. Reports are slow, systems are fragmented, and the insights that should drive revenue stay buried. Dive changes that. Dive is a fully managed analytics and live ops platform built for game studios. No data team required. An impressive 95% of their clients grow revenue in year one. You can learn more at dive.games/scale or simply check out the link in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by AppCharge, the payments platform built specifically for mobile gaming that processes over $1 billion annually. Their web store and payment links share one gaming tune checkout and merchant of record infrastructure, a 96% order success rate, a 0.1% dispute rate versus the industry's 0.83%. Gaming-specific infrastructure means the most net revenue on every sale. Just ask Product Madness, Triple Dot, and many more world-class publishers working with AppCharge. Head to appcharge.com to see how the numbers stack up, or simply check out the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to the Navic Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Kalie Moore. When we talk about where games actually get made, the maps in most people's head hasn't changed in 20 years. We have the US, Japan, a handful of European strongholds like Helsinki or Turkey for the mobile industry. But some of the most interesting movement in the industry right now is happening in the edges, in places that were, until recently, better known for exporting their talent than for keeping it. Portugal is one example of this movement. Between 2018 and 2024, the turnover of Portuguese games companies went from around 5 million to nearly 100 million. Studios are being bought by the likes of Funcom, Saber, and Fortis. Senior developers who left in the 2010s are moving back. And a country that has spent decades as a talent exporter is now trying to do something much harder by becoming a home for original IP. My guest today has lived every layer of this story. Jefferson Valadares has been a studio GM at Electronic Arts, an executive producer at BioWare, and head of mobile at Bandai Namco. He left San Francisco for Lisbon to co-found Doppio, a voice-first game studio backed by Amazon and Google, which was then acquired by Fortis Games, where he went on to lead studio acquisitions. Today, he's back to building from scratch. He's the co-founder and CEO of Part Nerd, a veteran studio making original co-op games for the Nintendo Switch 2. And he's president of the Portuguese Game Developer Association, which puts him right at the center of the exact transition that he's been betting his own career on. Today, we're going to talk about whether Portugal can become Europe's next gaming powerhouse, what that would really take, and also what the industry keeps getting wrong about emerging platforms, and why Jefferson chooses to keep building early rather than staying safe. Jefferson, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so I already mentioned in the intro, you've really had kind of a seat at every table. Studio GM at EA, EP at BioWare, head of mobile at Bandai, and you were also on the board of Rovio before their sale to Sega. Then you were a founder, then you were a corporate acquirer, now you're a founder again. I really want to hear, what did those AAA years teach you when you're founding your own company, and what did you have to unlearn at the beginning of founding your company?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When you start, I'm originally from Brazil, so like when I started, there's no resources, no anything, right? So you learn how to wing everything. I think that's and a founder, you kind of do a little bit of that too, right? When you get to the big leagues, when I moved to EA for the first time, then you get all these resources, you get media training, you get all this stuff, right? That you don't normally get as like a founder. Not everything is good, but I would say there's a, like, I think it's helpful to know when it's time to like cut some corners and like do something cheap and quick.
Yeah.
But sometimes it is worth doing properly. Sometimes it is worth doing like consumer research, testing, like putting all the effort, like hiring a consultant to kind of help you with this thing that you don't control, you're not an expert in, you know? So I think a lot of the startups, they're trapped into like the winging it mode, which is good, but they should probably be really good at a couple of things, right? And I think the big corporates are in kind of the other way around. Like they're trying to do everything at like super crazy level, but really they should be winging a couple of things, you know? I think for me, what I learned is like, now that I have this palette, like I can kind of pick like, okay, this thing, no, this is not worth like spending a lot of money in, like, let's just do this thing, or no, this, guys, we got to stop this and do this properly because this is important, you know?
Do you have an specific example of something that you either brought in extra help for, or you did something properly, maybe either at Doppio or your current company, that before your AAA days, you would have been like, no, let's keep this in-house?
I'll actually give an example at the AAA, because I think that's like the example I like to give to people, like how transformative getting the right help can be. Like we acquired, when I was at BioWare, we acquired a studio in Sacramento, like in California. They were really like, they were a startup, so they were like really, you know, they would do everything, etc. But they were not great at like game making. Like they made like stuff with Flash and PHP. They had like some very basic like tech, and the design was like, it had a lot of good instincts, but not a lot of like theory or quality, right? But they had something. The team had something, and we recognized that. And then when we acquired them, we kind of changed like their tech and improved like a lot of the things. On the design side, they were making like trading card games, right?
Okay.
And then we're like, okay, how do we teach? But they never made these games before. Like, how do we get them better? So we said, okay, who's really good at this? And then we looked at Richard Garfield, the guy who created Magic.
Yeah.
And then we called him like, hey, can you come and do some consulting for us? And then he came. Like, so his company came. Like, so he came to the office. He met the guys. He kind of played the game, gave some feedback, and then explained how the stuff should work. And then he disappeared for a couple of months, and then he came back and played again. So like, and that team, well, again, was acquired and weren't particularly good. Eventually, they made like a top 5 mobile game, like Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, like a really popular game. But that was a story that was built over a few games. But it started with like bootstrapping the studio, like, okay, we got to bring some help because, you know, they need this specific help, right? I mean, if you think about dollars, consulting dollars that we spent, I mean, in the long run, it was nothing. It was like a drop in water, you know, like, but a drop in the ocean. But like, obviously, as a startup, you probably look at that amount, it's like, oh, I'm not going to pay that guy like this much money, but it can be transformed.
Get that guy too, right?
That's right. Yeah. He probably took the call because it was, that's you. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you can get these things, right? And I think it's not always worth it because like you gotta, as with limited cash, like you gotta figure out what's worth it. But with the right thing, it really can be transformative. Yeah.
And what about on the other side of that? I think you'd mentioned that a lot of AAA studios should do things maybe scrappier. And I think we've seen a lot of that also just with AI and who's moving faster, who isn't, who's cutting corners. Do you have any specific examples from your more forward days that you can speak to where you wish things would have moved at a startup pace?
Yeah, I would say the games are a strange thing because like you can't just like write something on paper and then it's gonna be amazing, right? Like there's a lot of work like between the idea and the concept, and sometimes you just can't make it work. Like stuff that sounds good in your head doesn't work in software, and I think a lot of big companies fail at. I mean, if you talk to people, they know it, but the process and the way the company is architected does not respect that, right? So a lot of games that probably should have been killed early because you already know it's not going to work. People are like, no, we can fix it. And they kind of keep working on it. And then it becomes a big thing. And because there's so much money attached to it, then people want to like put some more money. And I'm not saying everything should be given up early, but there are some things that like, okay, you try a couple of times, it's not working, like you should stop. And at big companies, quite often people might try. And then eventually they might even ship the game because they had a commitment. Someone had committed to somewhere, like, and then, but if you ship a bad game, like what's the point? I mean, I think there's an era before, you know, maybe PS2 was like the last time where like you could, almost anything you could make with the right brand and the right gameplay, like you would sell some, but with a free-to-play, that became zero. Like if you make a bad game, you make $0, right? So I think, so the risk of like not recognizing this early enough But there's a lot of pressure, like in shipping.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about failure and like failure is okay and part of the process, but a lot of people don't like it in practice. So like you just say like, hey, we're going to cancel this game. Like people say, oh my God, it's a big failure. Like who's going to get fired for this? I'm like, dude, this is game development. Like it's going to happen. Like
some things don't work.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that companies like Supercell did really well is because they really celebrate this, right? And they kind of showed, I mean, a lot of people knew this, but like somebody else needs to be successful doing it so people can actually like feel comfortable doing it, you know? But yeah, it's okay to fail. It's actually part of the, and it's better to fail and stop soon than to like fail expensively. You know? Like, so I think this is one of the, I'd say probably the biggest thing that large companies should learn.
I want to jump to another part of your career. So at Fortis, you spent a stretch of time on the other side of the table actually acquiring studios, which must have been so interesting after building in that entire process. I would love to hear a little bit about that vantage point and what did it show you about why teams succeeded or failed that you might not have had from the operator perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you mentioned like, I'm really lucky with my experience because I have definitely seen many sides of stuff, right? And I think I was at a company that got acquired by EA, Playfish, which is like a studio in London when I was there at the time. Like, and because I had just come from EA, like I kind of helped like some of the acquisition stuff. So I kind of already had seen like, okay, what happens when you're acquired? And then when I was at in the US and BioWare, when we acquired the studio in Sacramento, then we had to integrate them, right? So I wasn't part of the deal, but I was part of the integration team, right? So trying to figure out, okay, what do we do with this? So I kind of had already seen from a couple of angles how these happen. And so when I was actually in charge of like, okay, finding the studios, I mean, honestly, the first thing, I think most of the acquisitions fail because there's lack of alignment into what the companies want, right? So I think part of the problem is the acquirer doesn't know what they want. And I think sometimes like, what do you want to buy? Like, do you want to buy IP? Do you want to buy like revenue? Do you want to buy like a team?
Yeah.
Do you want to buy like a skill set that you don't have? Do you want to buy tech that you don't have? Like you really got to think about that. In our case, what we wanted to do is like at Fortis, we wanted to acquire teams that could create new games. So what we're looking for is like design talent, teams that work well with each other. We were not looking for games that had a game that was making money, or we were not looking for IP or tech, you know? And we're definitely not looking for founders who wanted to exit and go on holidays, right? Because like we're trying to buy a team to use them, like in as part of our studio, right? When I went out, I was spending a lot of my time trying to figure out, okay, what do you want to do? Like, do you want the resources to make better games? Like, are you excited by the type of games we're making? Great. This is a conversation we should have. No, you just want to sell because you have a game that's making some money and some people are trying to buy it. Like, okay, good, but it's not for us. We don't need just a little bit more money on our like we're looking for new teams, you know? And I think that's I've seen, I mean, EA in particular did a lot of acquisitions and, you know, famously a lot of them didn't work out. And I think part of that is that I think they usually end up buying something, but then they fail to align like what the future is going to be like, and then they end up losing some of the value. Like I don't know, maybe 5 years later, a lot of the value is already gone, right? So I mean, you don't want to do that. I think if you're going to spend the money, and acquiring companies is like super complicated. I guess the other thing that helped was like because I had just been acquired by Fortis, I had just gone through the process, right? So like we did due diligence and all that stuff, and it's like brutal. And I'm used to the investment due diligence, but that's like another level, right? So they kind of go dig into everything, and we did the process. So I was also looking for, you know, I guess it helped on our conversations because I could honestly tell the guys on the other side, like, hey, I just went through this. Like, so I can, you know, I can tell you, is there anything you like or don't like? I mean, I can kind of help you figure out what's going to look like. So I think those were the fact that I had gone through a few, and including like directly being acquired myself, I think put me in a place where I could have empathy and like be able to kind of go and check like, okay, what do you want really? And try to get guys out of the sell mode and like, dude, like, okay, what do you really want to do in 5 years? Because like, if you just say something that you think is what I want to hear, like maybe we're both going to be disappointed in a couple of years, you know? So I think let's be honest.
This sounds like honestly an incredible job. I'm a little bit surprised. I shouldn't be surprised. I think we're actually seeing a lot of this, particularly in the venture capital world, of VCs going back and becoming operators again.
Yeah.
But that just seems like such a big jump. I'd love to hear, I just want to hear your thought process of leaving that It sounds like incredible job to go build again.
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought I would be doing this kind of acquisition type stuff. One of the Fortis like founders, he was the one who told me like, "Hey, you'd be perfect at this." And I'm, whatever, dude. Like, I don't think so. And eventually they kind of convinced me to kind of move and do that. And I started doing it, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, yeah, I mean, I kind of have like a lot of the positives like for this stuff, right? I don't have the deal. I didn't have at the time the deal making like, oh, how many X on this stuff. But this is easy to kind of, right? Yeah. So I was kind of a little bit uncomfortable not knowing that part of the job, but that was honestly like easy to kind of pick up, afterwards. So I think the hardest thing is like being able to tell what a good team is, which I had done a lot of when I was at EA. There's a couple of years where they sent me into trouble teams to kind of make them better. Like I did a lot of that work of like coming in, everything's on fire, and you're like the guy who came for HQ, so everybody hates you from day one, and you kind of like have to kind of win their confidence. And then, so I kind of did a lot of that. That kind of stuff helped, right? Because you can kind of tell a team that has good dynamics very quickly, which a deal guy would never know.
Yeah.
They just go in and, whatever, like they go have drinks with the guy and maybe that's enough, but like in my case, like I could tell more from the team. So yes, it was great. I was having a lot of conversations with really cool founders and a lot of people doing cutting edge stuff. So I think that was also good because when you're talking to the founders in the startups, you're looking at the next wave, right? You're not looking at old stuff because we weren't looking to buy money or like we're just looking to the future, like new teams. That was also great. But I think at the end, like I just felt, well, I guess there's a little bit of like a midlife crisis environment part of it. So I was just turning 50, like I was about to turn 50, and I'm like, my father just turned 80. I was looking at him like with his college buddies at a dinner, and I'm like, oh man, I should probably, soon it's gonna be me, I'm gonna be done. Like, am I happy? Like, have I done everything that I wanted? And I think this is like one of the things I wanted to do is like, okay, I really want to go back and make a game. Because when I started making an original game, it was very hard. Like, and to really do it, you needed a publisher and all the other things, right? Now the world has moved on to the place where like it's the best time to be an indie. I mean, problematic that there's a lot of them, so it's hard to get to be spotted in the attention economy. We're kind of speaking about early, but it is the best time to make, like with a small team, you can make something cool and you can kind of put it on out there for people to play, And I worked on a lot of like IP games. I worked on a lot of like big company games, right? Like Simpsons, Harry Potter, FIFA, Need for Speed. Like, but I never had like a game that I made like people like be excited about, So that was kind of like, I think the one of the hills I hadn't done. And I was like, okay, I was kind of looking for like, I need to do that. And he was very comfortable when I was at Fortis, but like I loved the guys and stuff, but like it was just like, okay, I need to do this for me,
Yeah. I'm going to jump around a little bit because I do actually really want to talk about Partnered, which is your new company. And I also want to go back to what you were saying of building teams, right? So actually, first, why don't you tell me a little bit about Partnered? And I also want to hear particularly of you're building games just for Nintendo Switch 2, correct? So I want to hear a little bit about the company, why the company, but then also why Nintendo Switch 2?
Yeah, so there's a reason behind all of that. So I think when I decided to leave, I was like, okay, I took a bit of time, and I'm terrible at taking time to think about this stuff. I think this is like one of the things that like people in the US are very good at, and like I've always jumped from job to job, like, and I can't have any breaks. But I mean, I'm putting my career where I can afford a little bit more. So I told it's going to be a month, but it ended up being like 3 or 4. Like, but anyway, it was good. So I was trying to think, okay, what do I want to do? And for me, it was something about, I want to work with like a small group of people that I enjoy, like working with, but also hanging out. Like, so this is like one of the bars for me. And the second part is, I want to make games that like we all enjoy playing. And then as a professional game developer, you can't always do this. Like many times I had to work on games that like I wasn't connected personally, right? I mean, this just happens, but like and it's fine, right? It's a job. But like in our case, we're in this place where like, okay, we want to have a small team. People were like, why with the Switch, right? I mean, I don't know. I think in my case, I feel the games industry got a little bit too greedy in general. Like, and it's all about money. Like at some point, I mean, money is always part of it, right? But I think, and it's a business, so I'm not like poo-pooing on that. Like I've obviously worked at big companies and stuff, but it's I felt when I was seeing executive conversations or green light meetings or stuff, like people are talking less and less about the game and just talking about like, ad spend and all these things. And nobody questions like, is this game fun? Like like, what is it like? Is anything here worth building? And people just trying to optimize for these other things, So they kind of lost a little bit, I think, of that magic that makes games like what they are. So when I was looking for like, what I want to do I want to work on mobile? I'm like, no, I mean, it's kind of gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I made a lot of mobile games. So I'm not, but I think at this moment in time, I'm like, I'm not interested in doing like free to play or mobile. And then on a console business, I think Nintendo is one of the, in my mind, the best company at trying to juggle these kind of being a little bit innovative, being a little bit about the fun, but still making money. So of course they're a business and they sell stuff like expensively sometimes. And, but I think they kind of balance these three things in a really well way. So I think in my case, I guess in our company's case, we thought, okay, let's just work with them.
Yeah.
Because I was also trying to like limit, we're a small team, we don't have bandwidth to handle like, let's do a cross-platform game for like multiple like dead launch. I mean, technically it's easy to make a game that runs everywhere, but like then you gotta sell it everywhere and it's work. And in our mind, it's just like, okay, what can we make? Can we spend all of our energy making the best game we can? So, people ask me like how many meetings I have at Gamescom. And I'm like, I'm just meeting Nintendo. I mean, that's the only meetings I have, right? Like everything else is like, well, some work on the association and then some meeting friends. But like business-wise, it's just Nintendo. I'm not seeing other publishers. I'm not talking to other platforms. I'm not. So it kind of simplified our lives because we're like, okay, we know what we're doing. It's very focused. So we can spend all of our energy making a game that hopefully people like. Because if you have something that people like, then everything else is easy after that, But like building that first thing, it's really hard, and we just wanted to focus.
And do you think that will change? Like, so let's say you build the hit game, it's super popular on Nintendo Switch too. Do you see yourself expanding to platforms once you kind of have that first down, or do you just want to solely focus on one?
It's a good question. I think spiritually we would like to focus, but I mean, it's a business, right? So if we get to a place where we have opportunities, then we would look at it for sure. Because I think there's been cases in the game in the past where like somebody releases a game, it's really popular, but then they don't kind of go to the other platforms and then clones come and take that space, right? So this happens a lot. And I think, I'm not saying that we are big corporate, we want to be everywhere or whatever, but like we would look into like, can we make the most of what we built? And I think that, so yeah, we would look at different things, but it wouldn't take away our focus from, we probably still want to have most of our focus on with Nintendo, I think, but we would look at our stuff also.
And then the game you're building a co-op game, right? Okay, and we know co-op is having a very commercial moment right now, but it's enormously hard to design and monetize. So what's your thesis there? What can you tell us about the game?
Yeah, so we're building games for ourselves, and we as friends, so like we're four, so like we play games ourselves. So we play a lot of games together, like four people. So I think it's a little bit of we're friends that want to hang out. So every weekend we play, a couple of hours, So this is kind of what we're trying to build. Like, can we build a game that people like us can play? So it's like a game where you want to hang out with your friends or family. It's not a game where you go and search for people to play with. It's a game where you bring your friends. So it's all about that. So I think, there's different types of co-op experiences. Like ours is about spending a fun time with your friends and family. This is the focus that we have. It's online, but also on the couch. So, and I think that's another thing that we love about the Switch is because the Switch is the only console that comes with two controllers, right? Like, like every other console, when you buy it, there's only one. So it like the Switch is already kind of like a family kind of friendly thing, right? And a lot of people have multiple of them at home, and you can kind of play the games. So that's what we're going for. We're trying to figure out, okay, games that you can kind of hang out. It's not a game that you play every day. It's not about DAU. It's not about like, buying the skins every couple of minutes. It's like a premium game, so you're going to pay X and you get the game. The Switch 2 has a feature called GameShare that one person playing the game, like the other people can join without having the copy of the game. So we are obviously building with that in mind because we want people to be able to, as long as somebody has a game, 4 people can play, and that's fine. Like, we're happy with that, And then, of course, if they want the game too, to kind of play with their friends, great, they can buy the game. But like, we're not going to force people to buy multiple copies. We're trying to really think like, what's the kind of thing that would make us happy, right? And then we're trying to do that. And it's funny because you're talking about learning and learning. this is a bit different angle of that conversation, but like we've been trained, all of us are veteran game developers, right?
Yeah.
We all worked in many companies and stuff. It's very hard to unlearn like these things about like, oh, but like was the demographic this is for, or like should we go test this thing? And I'm like, I mean, you can ask everyone. Like a lot of the things I do is like at least a couple of times in every meeting is like, no, what do we want to do?
Yeah.
Because and of course we do like some commercial stuff. At some point you got to do marketing, so you got to like do some assets and stuff. I mean, there's stuff you got to do, like sometimes you're just gonna make your TikTok content, but in our case, like when we're creating the product, we're really trying to protect it from those things. Because they're like, oh, what would Nintendo like? I'm like, don't care. Like, let's like, what do you like in the graphics, right? Like, what do you want it to look like? But our instinct is like, oh, we got to go look at all the other games on the platform and see what they look like. And I'm like, no, because then we're going to end up releasing the same thing. Like, you don't want to do that. I think the world is in a place where so much stuff that people are looking for like genuine things, right? They're not, because there's definitely, I mean, if you're just going to make a generic thing, like who cares? Like there's so much stuff out there. There's so many games. I mean, why? And for us, it's the same. Like, why would we make another game if it's just going to be a game that already exists? So we're actually pretty proud of our game. Like it's a strange concept. It took me months to come up with a way to describe it because it's a little bit different. When I showed people are like, oh, I never seen something like this. So it's still possible to do these things, right? Yeah. Even though it's 2026 and technically everything has been done. But I think you can still find new things, but you got to try. Mm-hmm. If you're just like going to follow best practice or do all these things, you're not going to get there.
I think it's amazing to be at the point in your career where you know that, but can also trust your gut too.
That's true. I think a lot of it is the comfort of like having experience and knowing like, we obviously use a lot of best practice in the point of view of like, okay, we don't want to, like we need to decide these things now, otherwise we're going to be screwed later in production. Like, so we got to finish proper pre-production, all that stuff. So we use a lot of like our experience. It's really more about understanding that the consumers have changed and they want like new things. They don't want like, I mean, at some point to release a game, you had to have like at least 40 hours or like, there's all these stuff, all these rules that they don't do anymore. The world is more fragmented. So there is an audience for almost everything. You got to find it.
Yeah.
And in our case, it's like we just got to be, if you're going to be true to something, let's be true to ourselves. And then hopefully there's more people like us. And of course, it's going to be a well-done game because we're like professionals, right? We're not going to, that's different from like being like a indie startup, like who never built anything. So we're not going to make the basic mistakes. We're going to make some mistakes, but more advanced mistakes, I suppose. But yeah, we're really, I think those few months when I was trying to think about it, I was trying to capture like, okay, where's the world? And right now, what do people want? Where do they want to get it? What partners do we want to have? Because, like I remember fundraising, like, I don't know, man, like I guess some people really love fundraising, but like for me, it was terrible. Like I'm not like a natural sales guy, and like I can do the work, but like it's not my natural state. And this stress of like having a call with like a VC and then going to bed and waking up at 2 a.m. looking at your phone to see have they replied yet? Because a lot of the people are on the West Coast or whatever, right? I was already here, and like my last fundraise, like I was like, have they replied already? Yeah. I go back to bed, like looking at the phone in the middle of the night. So like I was really trying to like limit this. And because also as a CEO, like if you in a startup, you got to fundraise and it's a lot of the time. So so you can't be connected to the product, right? Mm-hmm. But now, because we're not doing all that stuff, it actually allows me time to be in the product. So like we play the game every day. Like we're going to play the game in a couple of hours, like as our usual meeting. So yeah, this is great. I love it.
I want to go back to one thing that you said though, like, and just touch on it a little bit more. Is in 2026, what do gamers want?
It's a good question. I mean, it's a bit different too, I think, depending on the group of people.
How did you answer it when you were designing your game? So what do gamers who we know play a Nintendo Switch 2, who like co-op games, what do they want, and what's something new that you can give them in that genre and on that
front? That's a good question. Yeah, so for us, it was like, okay, if we want to entertain friends and family who want to have like a good time, like game night, right, type of stuff, once every weekend, it's not again. So we were trying to think, okay, it's not a game that you got to come back every day. It's like a thing where you can just get together and play. One of the things that we worry a lot about is like this concept of like asymmetric skill levels. So like we want to enable like somebody who's really good and people who never played the game, because we want parents to play with kids and with, maybe the spouses who don't play video games, they can kind of come in and play stuff as well, right? So we want to make the game in a way that even if you're not a gamer, it's fun. Mm-hmm. And I think like this is like a lot of the things we're trying to think about is like we're always trying, and as game developers, sometimes we overcomplicate stuff because we're so used to like having a lot of these mechanics, and we're trying to do a lot of effort in like, no, keep it simple, keep it light, keep it fun. But our game is like a little bit physics based, so it's natural.
Okay.
And it's different. Like when people play for the first time, they gotta play for like a few seconds until they get, and now I get it. And I think once they get it, then the concept is, because it's just throwing things around, people get it, right? And I think anybody can relate to that because it's like real world stuff. It's not like there's no like crazy story or like super weird concept. It's approachable. And again, it's a game we're not supposed to play by ourselves. You're supposed to play with other people so you can help out. A lot of the playtests we do, like we see people talking like, you go that way, you go this here. But I don't know what to do. No, I hate that. Why don't you go for that guy? And then like, so people are always chatting.
Yeah.
And that's how we measure that we're doing a good job. Because I think we want to be that kind of entertainment that gets people together, right? And then they hang out, like, yeah.
Okay, I have one last question about your current studio. You mentioned you have 4 people on the team.
Yes.
You said a quote upstairs that I really liked. Do you want to share it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
4 is the new 20, yeah.
4 is the new 20, yes. So it sounds like, had you worked with the 3 other people on the team before? Have you all worked
we've
together?
been working together since 2012, yeah.
Okay. And, back to what you were saying at the beginning of this conversation, how you were brought in to help, I don't know if this was your phrasing, but this is in my head of kind of fixing problematic teams, figuring it out. You said in the beginning, if a team is going to work together immediately or not. Taking that knowledge, how are you going to continue to build your team? Are you just always going to work with people that you've worked with before because you're at that point in your career where you can do that? I'd love to just hear your overall take on team building.
Yeah, so I think there's something good about working with people you already work with in the past, obviously. So I think that's good. So we are actively like collaborating with some of the people we worked in the past. That's definitely a thing. And it does make it easier because you kind of have a shorthand with them already. Like I kind of have that trust, which is really hard when you kind of, just give somebody to people to do. Like you got to trust that they're going to do it, right? If somebody already know, then you feel more comfortable. That said, I have learned in my career that it doesn't work 100%. So like sometimes somebody who used to work with you well 10 years ago, it's no guarantee it's going to work now because people move on with their lives. People want different interests and, life changes. People have kids. They want to do this. They want to do, it's no guarantee, but it's good. It's a good thing to have. That said, I think it's very easy for you to keep it stale and like just focus on the people you already know. So like every company I've had, like there was always a little bit of comfort, but like my previous startup, for example, like was me and my co-founder, but we hired like a lot of people that we didn't know because we're trying to do something new and innovative. So we wanted like young people who haven't made games in a long time, like us, as part of the mix, because we wanted that point of view. And I think with this is the same. We're already collaborating with some people that I never worked with before. Obviously, the caveat is like they worked with friends, so I kind of become recommended, and to me is like a little bit of a risk. But I like this idea too of like mixing up the established trust and things, but you gotta add some new
perspective.
Elements, yeah. Like I don't think you should stick to like just even though it's comfortable and it's powerful. I mean, it's very different. If I was just starting a team with 4 people I didn't know, I mean, there's no way we would ship a game in a year. Like it would take years, right? Because it's like or we would fight and like something bad would happen, or odds are something bad would happen, right? Because we already know each other, we know that's not as much of a risk. But then the risk is like, we're just going to get stale. And so I think, I'm trying to balance it out with new collaborators.
Yeah. All right, I might shift gears a little bit because we are, as I mentioned at the top of this call, we are filming today in Lisbon, in Portugal. I live in Berlin most of the time, but I have to say I feel like I've lost half of my Berlin community to Portugal over the years. I know it is this booming industry. And so one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you is to talk about the Portugal place, because you are leading the Portuguese Video Game Producers Association. Is that correct? Right. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers, which I know I shared at the top, but just to recap, between 2018 and 2024, the turnover of Portuguese game companies went from 5 million to nearly 100 million. And that headline is striking, but growth from a small base usually is. If you strip out the multinationals who are operating in Portugal, how big is the Portuguese owned industry, and does that metric matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think in like ecosystems go through waves, right? And I think when I moved here, so I was in 18 in San Francisco. I was deciding what I wanted to do next with my life, and then I was like, okay, maybe I want to start a new company again. Where? Being a SF is good because you have the money and you have all the connections, but I thought it was not a good place to spend the money and to build a team because people also move very quickly, right? So I think I wanted to kind of build a team and not have the pressure of having to make something quick because the investors are like around, and if you have a high burn, then you kind of have to do something quick. So I looked into Europe again. I had moved to the US. I mean, I lived in Finland and the UK before, so I looked into those places like Helsinki, London. I also looked at like Stockholm, Berlin, Paris, and Barcelona. Lisbon was not on my list originally.
Interesting.
It was a friend of mine in London who has a studio there who mentioned like, hey, you should check out Portugal. It's really good now. And I'm like, whatever. Because, in Brazil, as when we were growing up, Portugal was seen as like a backward place because of, I never thought about Portugal. Like there's not a thing that I would come to my mind. But in 18, he mentioned, and me and my wife were like in Europe visiting all these cities to see which one we were going to be at. And then when we came to Lisbon, I was like, oh, I really like the vibe here because, stuff's happening.
Yeah.
Like you can see there's excitement. I knew Portuguese talent was good because pretty much every place I worked, there was always like somebody from Portugal. Like in Finland, in UK, there's always like some Portuguese guys in the office, right? So I have a lot of Portuguese friends from here, but from who are not living here, I know them. But so I kind of knew the talent was good. But I didn't realize, the ecosystem was going through this revival and a lot of energy in the startup scene. And like I went to Startup Lisboa at the time, which, Unicorn Factory now. I went to visit them and I was like, this is cool. And it's not fully built up because I think if I wanted to be somewhere where things were more evolved and like obviously London, Stockholm, these are like fully developed ecosystems, right? Berlin had a bit of the new thing, but it was already way further. And I think even Barcelona to me felt already like, and I felt Portugal was a bit easier as well to be an expat compared to like some of these other places. Berlin is good, but I think, Barcelona is a very local place. Yeah. Like if you're not Catalan, like things are a bit harder, like even the Spanish people have a hard time there, but like if you're not from Catalonia. So I thought, okay, Portugal, and I kind of obviously speak the language because I'm from Brazil. So I felt, okay. And it kind of has emotional, like I'm from Rio and, Lisbon has like a Rio vibe, I mean, Rio is a little bit prettier, but like this is, but the cobblestones and all these things, like it's things that I grew up with as well, right? So I was like, okay, I can see this. There's something here, and then maybe this works. But I didn't know like it was going to work, right? It was a bet, and I think I made that bet a little bit earlier than most people. There's a lot of people here now, but I came in 18 when it wasn't that clear. Of course, the pandemic like opened up a lot more and the stuff, but this was pre-pandemic too. But so I came and I started meeting the ecosystem, and a lot of the ecosystem at the time were really small companies, like 3-4 guys, maybe. There's a few studios which are maybe like 15, but like there's a lot of like really small teams. And then there's like Miniclip, which is, one of these companies who came to build a studio here, and they built up a really big studio. They have even over a few hundred people now.
Okay, wow.
And they were definitely like the biggest. Everything else was like a little bit small. There's maybe some teams are like 40. This reminded me a little bit when I was the closest comparison I have was Helsinki, because when I went to Helsinki was not what it is today.
Yeah.
Right. And I tell people like, when I lived in Helsinki, it wasn't cool. It was just cold. That's what. Now it's still cold, but it's cool too, right? And it was not like at the time. This is like I moved to Helsinki in 2005, so this is like over 20 years ago. But it was already there. You could see like there were a lot of companies, and they were in a stage where like the local companies were doing well, And then they were getting acquired by American companies, right? So Sumaya, which is the place where I work, became like Digital Chocolate. THQ Wireless became like, or came and bought Universamo, like Rio Networks bought Mr. Good Living. So like there's like a few studios that were starting to do well, and then like they were acquired, right?
Yep.
Which I guess the story that happens everywhere. But then, so that grew the ecosystem a bit more. But the real change happened after that, right? Because these guys who, the Finns are really good at like engineering and like being practical, and like they were horrible at marketing or like selling stuff, right? And but I think when you get acquired by an American company, suddenly you start learning how to sell stuff, right? Because this is one thing the Americans are really good at, is like, how do I position this thing and like all these things. And so you could see the guys learning, oh yeah, we can do it, you know, like this is what people want, this is how I can do it, this is how I can. And then the next generation, the people who were acquired when they started their new companies, then you see like Supercell, Rovio. I mean, these are like companies that became huge. But these are like founders who had some success. They got acquired, they leveled up, and then they tried again, and then it happened, right? And I think Portugal is in a stage where a few years ago, a lot of the more promising studios got acquired, including mine. So like ZPX here in Lisbon got acquired by Funcom. Big Moon in Porto got acquired by Saber. And my company got acquired by Fortis. So I think we're in that stage where these founders are still working for the acquired companies. I'm not anymore, but like all the other guys are. And moreover, the talent before, if you're a talented person here and you wanted to work with games, the only place to learn was abroad.
Yeah.
Now that's not true anymore. You can be here and work for like a world-class company, right? Like Saber, Miniclip. Like so you're learning really good practices, and you don't have to leave your country anymore. So I think that's a change, and that kind of volume of and quality and density of like talent, I think that's what's going to generate like the next wave. And I don't think Portugal is like prime time now, but I think the prime time will come. The next, I don't know, maybe 5 years. There's going to be these companies that can change the world, you know, because games is crazy. Like if you release a game, like Supercell is a good example, right? Like this small company, they try to a lot of things, and then suddenly they're like billions, right? I think if you can make one hit, it really can change the country. I mean, like the games changed film. Like when I lived there, a third of their GDP was Nokia, right? Like now it's nothing, looks nothing like that. And I think the Supercell is like the biggest taxpayer in Finland or something, you know? Like I think, so there's all these, it really changed the DNA of the country. And I think that can happen here too. But we need, it's not enough in that sense. I mean, it's good to have these multinationals here because they level up the talent, and you know there's more experience that goes around, etc. But that doesn't change the country. What changes the country is like local companies like making games and then becoming huge. You know, this is like eventually what I think will change the environment here.
And I want to talk about that primetime moment because I think I read an interview of you. One of the many reasons I wanted to talk to you was because of this interview. And you framed the goal as moving from talent exporter to a powerhouse of original IP. Yeah. And those are really different economies. So I think when you say primetime, we're talking about that original IP moment, right?
Exactly.
What's the hardest transition to make that happen? Or is it simply time when the founders who have been acquired are going to start their own thing?
This happens a lot with like you're talking about like how game development moved from like, you know, Germany, Japan, US, like to the fridges, right? And I kind of noticed that when I was in the US, like 10 years ago, like, because I was already seeing as an executive, like decisions being made about like, no, this studio is too expensive, SF is too expensive, LA is too expensive. Like people are talking about these things, so we can't grow, we can do this. Oh, let's buy this team in Australia, let's buy this other thing. And I'm already seeing like, if I wanted to make games, that was part of my, I guess, motivation to leave San Francisco was like, if I just want to be an executive, SF is fine. Yeah. But like, or LA, right? But like, or New York. But I think, if I wanted to actually be doing the thing, like this stuff is going to be done more and more elsewhere.
Yep.
30 years ago, like nobody knew how to make games. It was Japan, US, UK, right? There's very few people that knew. But like now, like the knowledge is out there, the tools are out there, and like anybody can make games. So there's talent everywhere. I think the difference, a lot of these new ecosystems, they become technically good first or art good. But it's very hard for them to create their own game. And I think that product part is the hardest part. Like, and I think, because if you're just like a co-dev studio or an outsourcing studio, you're never leading the product. And that's one of the problems. I have a lot of experience too in Romania. I never lived there. Bucharest is the city that I've never lived in, that I've visited the most. I've been to Bucharest 70 times in my life. Because I worked there at EA, Bandai Namco, and Fortis. All of them had offices in Bucharest because the talent there is great. But the teams there were always helping out teams in the US or UK or whatever, right? So they were never leading the product. So they have a lot of talent, but every time a studio there tries to make a game, it's not that good. And I think that's kind of, that changed obviously, but I think I'm talking more about maybe 10 years ago, but now you can see finally good studios there, but it's because some of these guys, the product guys, had to leave and come back.
Yeah.
Or they actually worked in a company that gave them the product. Fortis, for example, lets the product be developed there, which is not common with EA or Ubisoft or whatever.
Yeah.
That tends to be more centralized. So those guys have higher odds of being successful, right? And I think, so that's what I think Portugal is missing. Is not the programming, it's not the art. It's what games to make.
Yeah.
How, what, for whom, how do we do this well? And that talent, either you learn in a big company doing it there, or you make your own games, but there's going to be a lot of failure that way, right? So I think, I think as public policy, this is one of the things we try to do with the government, is how can we incentivize more small studios to release their things so they can learn without having to leave? But also how can we bring bigger companies here so they can kind of teach these things to people, right?
That's exactly what my next question was going to be about, your work with the Portuguese Video Association and what the overall goals are. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the work that you guys are doing to bring larger studios in here? What does that look like?
Yeah, so our main thing is representing the studios that are in Portugal, right? So these are our members, and this is mostly who we represent. So we're trying to make life easier for them, and this includes talent, making sure that it's easy to hire people from abroad or to keep the talent here. Tax, how to operate. There's a lot of things that we try to do to help the ecosystem here be good. Now, we do this, but we always keep an eye on how do we make the whole pie bigger?
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the areas where we don't lead this work, but the government has an agency called ISEP, which is the import-export kind of helping. And they sometimes come to us and say hey, we have this big company who wants to come to Portugal. Can you guys talk to them and explain what it's like? So we always do that. So we don't push. We're not attracting people, but we're trying to make sure people understand what's good and what's bad, because that's also the thing. After I moved here, as you can guess, in 2020 or 2021, there's a time every week I had the friend calling me hey, you're in Lisbon, right? How is it over there? Is it? And I was trying to explain, it's really good if you want to do this kind of things, but if you're trying to make a PlayStation 5 game that's going to need 100 3D animators, don't come here, because they don't exist here, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do something new or trying to be different. So this is kind of the conversation we do. We work with the government when there's interest. We try to say, hey, Portugal is really good for this stuff, maybe not as good for this stuff, and then we let them decide. But yeah, we try to help connect them with the ecosystem. Hey, we're going to have a meetup. So if you want to meet some new talent, here's the place to come. So we try to integrate them in the community and obviously paint an accurate and positive picture of the location before they come, to see if they come. But yeah, that's kind of the extent of it, I think.
I want to talk a little bit about your previous game company that we've blown over. So Doppio, it was an early bet on voice as gaming as a platform, which, man, you were early.
Yeah.
How do you look back on that bet now?
Yeah, it's funny. I think when we started, me and Chris, my co-founder, we wanted to do something different. And I think at the time we looked around. Actually, if I go back a little bit further, there's been times in my career that I wanted to do something. I think 14 was I was in between EA and Bandai Namco at the time. I was thinking should I do a company? Around that year, VR was everything. Everyone's VR, 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 VR. And I'm I'm not that excited about VR. So I set that one out and, just stayed with a job. But I think in 17, 18, Alexa, all this stuff was kind of starting. And I'm oh, there's something cool about being able to talk with a game, because we have done a lot of games like this, but we haven't done a lot of stuff like this, right? There's been a couple games. We're and I thought this could be, there's an opportunity here to make an Angry Birds type thing, because Angry Birds was a game that was possible with a touchscreen. It was before it was kind of hard to make that kind of experience, but when the iPhone came and people figured that out, it felt native to the thing, but it was a new experience, right? And that's why I think it exploded. And in our case, okay, we can probably do it's a new platform. It's exploding. At the time, like everybody was getting like voice assistants at home. It was like their adoption curve was crazy at the time. Like it was faster than internet, faster than everything. And so we're like, okay, this is becoming really popular. If we can find a game that's played in a way that nobody has ever done, like this could be something really cool here. So that's kind of the motivation for us to do that. Now, we're definitely building on top of other people's platforms, right? Which is always a bit of a risk, and new platforms too. So I think Alexa, we started on Alexa because they're the first one who had monetization. Google didn't at the time, nor Bixby or some of the other ones. I remember Samsung calling us. I'm like, hey, you guys should really like your games. You guys should come to our platform. I'm like, can we make money? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. So there's your answer. I'm not going to make games for free. And as soon as Google opened like on Google Assistant, the monetization, we went to Google as well. But yeah, we kind of noticed that they weren't really investing. I mean, we still think at the time, like if they kept the investment, maybe it would have become something. But we kind of noticed like, okay, they're not. So we got to figure out like, okay, what do we do? So we pivoted a bit into Zoom because it's already like, 1920.
Oh, yeah.
And Zoom was releasing the Zoom apps. And we made actually one of the Zoom app launches, there's like a game that you play over chat, but it's voice. So as you're saying a word, the game is listening, and if you say the right word, you get a point. If you say the wrong word, you get dinged. So it was honestly, it was one of the best prototypes I've ever made. It was a bit of magic. Like people are playing, and the game was just keeping score, and it was hands-off game. Like you're just talking to your friends, and the game was like moving. So it was really cool. So I felt, okay, there's something here too. But then Zoom, they promised like some stuff that never came out, and then they never monetized that super strongly. And then, of course, the tail of the pandemic came.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people still use it for work, but not necessarily for like personal stuff. And I think, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to do like there's a lot of like B2B content stuff, like, a game you can play with your coworkers, whatever. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to make consumers. But, so we kind of said, okay, let's go build our own platform. And then we kind of made a plan because we think there's something here. And then we were fundraising. We actually had a term sheet with like a Silicon Valley VC. We were kind of like negotiating the paperwork when Fortis decided to like make an acquisition bid. And then I had to like stop and think, okay, do I want to keep going or do I want to sell?
Yeah.
And the acquisition closed in November of 21. So like, I'm clearly a genius because I made the right call. Because if I sold at the peak of the market, because the market went to into disaster mode 3 months later, but like I didn't notice, right? But it was just like the feeling of like, I think I'm more aligned with the games company, and they kind of like what we're doing. So like, we're gonna give you the resources. Then if I just go into the VC world, and then who knows, right? Like
Also raise just enough money to not be able to
just roll the clock for another 12 months, and then So I was like, you know what? Like I think it's better to do this, but. Clearly, it was like, I'm a genius, yeah. So
I love it when timing works out. Okay, so you've said that the next decade of gaming won't resemble the last. What's the specific shift that you think most of the industry is really underestimating right now?
I think we took for granted, because for a long time, games were being led by the same group of people, because games didn't exist until like 70s, 80s, and then suddenly the games were. So it was just basically the same group of people making the games like bigger and better and better graphics and all these things, right? And then there's generations who grew up with that, so they kind of just follow that influence. But I think what's happening now is like the younger generation, like they're not growing up with like by playing GTA or those things. They're growing up with like Roblox and Minecraft, and it's really a different gaming experience because they're playing with their friends. They're kind of making their own content a little bit. The graphics are terrible and they don't care because they're there to have fun, right? So I think what that happened is like actually enabled a little bit, I think, the indie revolution, because now for the longest time, if you want to make a game, the graphics need to be amazing and all these things. These are not true anymore. Actually, like the more money you put in the game, the more trouble you're going to be like to kind of get it back, right? The audience doesn't care about graphics. They care about fun. They care about something new. They care about like, can I do this with my friend, right? Can I see somebody playing on a video? Like, I think they're like the way they interact with games is like, I remember in the beginning people saying like, oh, influencers is like YouTube, we got to make a game that people can kind of make a video of, and like a lot of people work with it, like, oh my God, I really want to do this. Like, but I think, I'm not saying that you got to do it, but these things are happening. So I think there will be weird shape games compared to the traditional stuff coming out, both because the consumers are more open to random stuff, but also because, again, games used to be made by like 3 countries for a long time, right? There's like US, UK, Japan, like, and then Germany grew, and then now there's games from everywhere. Like a lot of the games that people play these days, they don't realize they were made in Indonesia or in Thailand or like in Brazil, right? And these people are coming up with new games like that were not what we used to play 30 years ago. So I think that's the difference. Is like everybody already plays games. So that happened like, let's say maybe 10 years ago, like it got to a point where like pretty much everybody had played a game. You know? Like this is so games had already gone to that place. So like everybody knows what the game is and everybody plays, even if they say, no, I never play any games. Well, what do you do when you're on the subway? Oh yeah, I play some Candy Crush, but it's not a game. I'm just like, okay, fine, you don't play games.
I asked every one of my women friends, I was doing research or something, and everyone said I'm not a gamer, and I'm like, no, tell me like what is it? Every single person have played like at least an hour, and they're like, oh no, it's just matching colors. It's like, not a game. They don't like it's game. Yeah, it's so wild.
Which is it's fine, but like but yeah, everybody's used to playing. So this happened. We kind of crossed that barrier, but I think that we're in a place now where like games that were made by people that we never had the chance to enjoy are going to be available. So people are going to be new types. I'm really excited actually, because I think I'm tired. I mean, when I go back when I look at Steam or whatever, and I see the same pixel art style, like with the people jumping, I'm like, oh my God, in like 40 years, like, can we get something new, please? And I know people like it, it's fine. But me, I'm kind of excited about this kind of new angles or stuff.
What's the last game that you played that you were really either excited by or impressed by, or had that moment of like, oh man, I wish I would have made that?
That's a good question. I mean, there's been a few of these in my career. We're actually having this conversation like with some friends recently, because people ask like, what kind of games? We're talking about like, there's a game called Portal and there's a second version of it called Portal 2, which is basically like, Portal was a game that it's very short.
Okay.
But it has like a massive twist in it. You're kind of playing it and it's kind of fun. And then at some point, like it goes off the rails and you're like, oh my God, what just happened? And then you're kind of like, oh, and then it's over and you're like, wow, I did not expect this. Right? So I think this is one example. And then, I ask my friends, I'm like, oh, I really like Portal 2. And Portal 2, I mean, it's a better graphics, better voice actors, more things, but it's not, I mean, and it has the same mechanics, but it doesn't have the same twist of the first one. Or at least, by then you kind of already lost the novelty. But I think that's one of the things that stay with me usually is like when something happens that I was not expecting. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, I did not expect this. And that stays with you,
Yeah.
And I think those are the games that then, the other like example I have is like I was playing this game with, it's like a narrative, one of those kind of Life Strange games. And then there was I was feeling really attached to the people. Like, I mean, you kind of connect to the people on movies and stuff, but like I remember like playing the game and then going to bed and I'm like really thinking like as if they were my friend. And like, yeah. And I was like, dude, this game really sunk.
What was that game called?
It's one of the Life Strange games.
Okay, Life Strange. Okay.
The whole series has these things, and I don't know that they did anything specific in the game. Maybe it's just the writing or something.
But there was that thing that got you.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, this is a real. I mean, I know it's not, but like I'm having the reaction of like this is a friend. Like it was strange. But I think these are the things that stay with me. But again, like, and that's why I think I'm attracted to new stuff. And I've always been in my career. Like I worked in mobile games in 2005 when like nobody was doing them. And then I worked on Facebook games like before in beginning too. And then, so I voice, as you can see. So because I'm excited about that, like, can we scratch some new itch, Like, can we do something different? Like this, and that's kind of why I'm proud of what the game we're making right now, because it has some of that. So.
Well, I can't wait to play that game once it's out and ready. I think we just have time for one more question. So you've been the executive, the founder, the acquirer, and now the association president. And you keep choosing Portugal and you keep choosing to build something unique, new, early. 10 years from now, if all of this works, what does the Portugal games industry look like? And what do you hope your fingerprints are on the most, whether it's the policy, studio, or the game you're building right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm hoping that there will be like 10 years from now when people say like, oh, that game, I remember that Portuguese game, that was amazing. I think, because I think, people know like Clair Obscur, they know it's French, and like, oh my God, the game's so French, ha ha ha. Like I think being able to do something that people recognize, like, oh yeah, I remember that game came from Portugal, I think that would be cool. for that to happen, obviously, we need enough companies that are creating their own content at a quality level that they can kind of break through. So yeah, I think my dream would be 10 years from now, there's at least being one game that everybody knows that's being made here. I think that's kind of the dream.
What about with your current studio or game? How do you hope?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, but like I don't need my game to be world recognized, but I definitely want to build like an audience that connects with what we're doing, that I can kind of continue making games for. I think that's kind of my goal. Like I don't need it to be like $1 billion business or whatever, right? Like I'm as long as it's enough money that me and my friends can be, me and my friends, co-founders, can be. As long as we can keep working with people we like and making games that we genuinely think are good, that's what I want to do. And of course, you do need some money for that, right? So I can't just like make art that nobody buys. Like so we're putting a lot of our heart into this because we think it's a moment in the world where people are looking for that kind of stuff. Hopefully, we can kind of build an audience, because once you already have an audience, things are easier. Mm-hmm. You can kind of like cater to them more and different things. But yeah, my goal would be to make one game that allows us to do that, whether that's the first one or I mean, you always think it's this one, but maybe it's the next one, who knows? But
well, those are great KPIs to have. Jefferson, thank you so much for joining us on the Navik podcast.
That's why I mean, a pleasure.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, whether on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, or give a 5-star review. And if you want to reach out or provide feedback, shoot us a note at podcast@navik.co or find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Plus, if you want to learn more about what Navik has to offer, make sure to check out our website, www.navik.co. There, you can sign up for the #1 games industry newsletter, Navik Digest, or contact us to learn about our wide-ranging consulting and advisory services. Again, that is www.navik.co. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.